So our topic today is arithmetic sequences. Now some people say arithmetic sequences. Both are correct. Okay. Now some of these here are arithmetic sequences and some are not. We want to identify which ones are and which ones are not. Now, if I look at this one, I want to know how far is it to go from -5 to -3, and -3 to -1, and -1 to 1. In other words, what's happening? Well, to go from -5 to -3, we are adding 2, right?
Yes.
And to go from -3 to -1, we're adding 2 again. And -1 to +1, adding 2 again. So an arithmetic sequence is just defined as you are adding or subtracting the same amount each time. Because that's true, then this is an arithmetic sequence. Now here I go from 100 to 107. That's an addition of 7. Here I go from 107 to 114. That's another addition of 7. 114 to 121. Another addition of 7. Right? And so, because I am adding or subtracting the same amount every time, it's an arithmetic sequence. Okay, on the next one, I'm going from 1 to 3. That's an addition of 2. And I'm going here from 3 to 6. That's an addition of 3. And I'm going here from 6 to 10. That's an addition of 4. Am I adding the same amount each time?
No.
Then it is not an arithmetic sequence. All right, let's look at the next one. So I've got going from 5 to 3 is a subtraction of 2, right? 3 to 1, another subtraction of 2. 1 to -1, another subtraction of 2. -1 to -3, another subtraction of 2. Since we are subtracting by the same amount every time, then it is an arithmetic sequence. Okay, so let's look at this question. This question asks us, what is the value of the 100th term in the sequence? Right? So our sequence goes 15 and then 9 and then 3 and -3. And I really don't want to write 100 terms here, do I?
No.
To figure out what the 100th one is. So let's make us a little T-chart. What is my first term? 15. What is my second term? 9. What is my third term?
3.
What is my fourth term?
-3.
And what I'm looking for is the 100th term, right? Right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make an equation that I can plug 100 into, and it'll give me the 100th term. So we want an equation that I can plug in 100, and it'll give me the 100th term. Now I know my first term's 15. So we're starting with 15, and we're adding to it our change times our n minus 1. Okay? That is the general formula. Let me rewrite it. That is the general formula. Your general formula is your first term plus your delta. Delta, that triangle delta means change. Say change. Times n minus 1. N is whatever term you want. Right? If you want the 100th term, you'd put 100 for n. Right? So in this case, the first term is 15 plus, and I need to figure out what my delta is. In other words, how much is this going down each time? It's going down 6 every single time. So my change is -6 times n minus 1. So there is my formula. This formula right here will give me whichever term I want, right? So let's test it. Are you ready to test it? Let's say I put 1 right here, right? What is 1 minus 1?
0.
And 0 times -6 is 0, and 0 plus 15 is 15. 0 plus 15 is 15, so the first term was 15. It worked, didn't it? Let's say I wanted to calculate the second term. So I'm going to put a 2 right here for n. 2 minus 1 is 1. Times -6 is 1 times negative 6 is negative 6, plus 15 equals 9. So when I plugged 2 in, I got 9 out, didn't I? So we can use this formula to calculate the 100th term. So I've got 15 plus negative 6 times 100 minus 1. And what is 100 minus 1? 99. So I've got 15 plus negative 6 times 99. So that's 15 plus negative 594. And when you add those two up, you get negative 579, right? So if I were to list this sequence out 100 terms, my 100th term would be negative 579. Correct? Okay, so let's do this one right here. Pause the video and see if you can figure out the 5th term. They give you the first, the second, the third, and the fourth, and they want you to tell what the 5th term is. So this is about as easy as they come, right? To go from negative 6 to negative 3, they're just adding 3, aren't they? Negative 3 to 0, they're adding 3 again, aren't they? 0 to 3, they're adding 3 again, aren't they? So we'll add 3 again to that, and we'll get what? 6. And that's our 5th term, right? Okay, now this is written a little different. Now remember the formula I gave you earlier. And the formula I gave you earlier will give you any term. You take the first term, A sub 1 means the first term, and you add to it your change times n minus 1, right? Hello? Yes. And so here they want the 11th term. So it says right here my first term is negative 7. So I'm going to go negative 7 plus, and my change is 2. Right? There's my change, 2. So plus 2 times, and they want the 11th term, so I put 11 minus 1 in. So I have negative 7 plus 2 times 10. So that's negative 7 plus 20, which equals 13. So the 11th term in the sequence they defined here would be 13. Okay, do this one. So you got to remember your formula. Your formula says take your first term and add to it your change times your n minus 1, right? Well, it says right here my first term is negative 8 plus my change is 4 times n minus 1. Well, they want the 14th term. So 14 minus 1 is 13, right? And so 4 times 13, I think, is 52. Plus negative 8, which is going to give you 44. So in the sequence that they have here, the 14th term would be 44. Okay, so I want you to do this one right here. Now this one's written a little different, isn't it? So here they want the what term? So all I have to do is put 19 right there where I is. So the 19th term will be 8 minus 2 times 19 minus 1, which is 18. So I've got 8 minus 36, which equals negative what? 28. So negative 28. Okay? And so when it's written in this form right here, all you have to do is plug the term you want in right there in for I. Okay, so now do this one, please. So remember the formula on this one. You take your first term and you add to it your change times n minus 1. So our first term, they tell us, is 9. And I add to it my change, which is negative 4, times whatever term I want. I want the third term minus 1. And so that's 9 plus negative 4 times 2, which is 9 minus 8, which equals 1. 1. So my third term in this sequence would be 1. Okay, well, those were all sequences. Okay, now let's talk about some series. Okay, and let me tell you what a series is. A series is the sum of a sequence. Okay, so let's say that this is my sequence, 2, 0, -2, -4, right? There's my sequence. A series is if I took all these and added them up. So 2 plus 0 plus -2 plus -4. So if you were to add all these values up, you'd get -4. Okay? And so that's what they're asking us to do here. Look at what this question says. It says the arithmetic sequence is defined by the formula. And here's your formula. What is the sum of the first 6 what? Terms. Now sum means what? Sum means add. So I need to find out what the first 6 terms are and add them all up. Okay? And so let's calculate the first term. So I put a 1 here because I want the what term? First. If I wanted the second, I'd put a 2 here. If I wanted the third, I'd put a 3 here. So I'm going to put a 1 here. 1 minus 1 is 0 times 4 is 0. -26 plus 0 is still -26. So my first term is -26. Let's calculate the second one. 2 minus 1 is 1 times 4 is 4. 4 plus -26 is -22. Now I can see it's going down how much each time? It's going up how much each time? 4. So if I add 4 to it again, I'll get -18. If I add 4 to it again, I'll get -14, then -10, and then -6. Okay? So there are the first 6 terms of my sequence. And now they want me to add them all up. So take your calculator and add them all up and tell me what you get. So when you add them all up, you get -96. And what that is that's -26 plus -22 plus -18 plus -14 plus -10 plus -6. That's what that is right there. Now there is a faster way to do it. Okay? Here's the fastest way to do it. Take the first term and add it to the last term and divide them by 2 and then multiply that times how many there are. We want the first 6, right? So I'll multiply it by 6. So do in your calculator -26 plus -6, and you should get -32. Then divide by 2, and you should get -18. And then multiply that by 6, and that should give you -96. Did it? And so look at what the formula is. You add the first one, say the first one, plus the last one, and you divide by 2. Then you multiply all that by however many terms you're trying to add up, right? It says right here the first 6 terms, so I multiplied by 6. Okay, so why don't you guys try this one right here? So if we want the first term, what do we plug in for I right here? 1. So 1 minus 1 is 0 times 3 is, say 0. And 0 plus -25 is -25. So the first term is -25. Now I need to calculate the last term. Well, this what says, what is the sum of the first 13 terms? So in for I right there, I need to put a what? So 13 minus 1 is 12. 12 times 3 is 36 plus -25 gives me 11. So my 13th term would be 11. But they don't want to know what my 13th term is. They want to know what the sum of all 13 terms is. So here's the first one. There's the last one. I'm going to divide by 2. And then I'm going to multiply that all times 13 because that's how many terms I've got. And so I got -25 plus 11 is -14 over 2, which is -7. And I want to multiply that by 13. And what do you get? -91. So if I were to list all 13 terms and add them up, I'd get negative 91. Okay, so now that we've done all that, that should have equipped you to be able to get 5 in a row on evaluating arithmetic sequences 2, and then this number 12 right here that I just added today, arithmetic series.